5 million illegal border crossings since Biden took office. Jeff Berkowitz, and ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Jeff and I are going to be talking about what's happening at the border. It's a big story. Today, May 11, at midnight, Title 42 goes away. And Jeff, the border crossings are just totally out of control. We have estimates of something like 500,000 or more additional illegal immigrants at the border ready to come in. You and I, as I say, will be talking about that. But there are so many big stories happening this week. And one of the big ones is concerning the Biden family finances. And yesterday, as we taped our show, yesterday, May 10th, the House Oversight Committee, the Republican members of the House Oversight Committee, had a press conference in which they were talking about the information that they have gleaned thus far in their investigation as to whether Joe Biden and his family members took money from the Chinese and other entities. The press conference ran about 47 minutes. And we're going to show, Jeff, because a lot of people were unable to watch it. They were unable to watch it because not one of the three major networks covered this story. It's unbelievable. I would call it journalism malpractice. We'll maybe get to that also later in the show. But first, just so everyone will know what we're talking about on this big story, let's listen to a consensus here of a couple of bites of what compilation, I should say, a couple of bites from yesterday's press conference.
Hunter Biden's representatives claimed the money was, quote, good faith seed funds, but could not explain why those funds had to go through an intermediary in what appears to be an attempt to hide the transfers from the Chinese. They also couldn't explain why the Bidens received over $1 million in 16 different wire transfers over a period of 3 months to at least 5 different banks. The president, when confronted with this information, said it wasn't true. Instead of being honest with the American people, President Biden has claimed since the 2020 election that his family has not received money from China. That was a lie in 2020, and he continues to lie to the American people now. The Bidens have received millions of dollars from China. It is inconceivable that the president did not know it.
Concealment, hiding money, shifting money, and for the purpose, we don't know, because one thing everybody in this room and the American people definitely know is that the Biden family doesn't really have a business. There is no business structure around this family except politics. And the family's getting money from various countries and foreign businesses through various shell companies and this web of LLCs. We have now been able to clearly see that the Biden's associates, like Rob Walker, Eric Sherman, as has been discussed, created at least 16 companies while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. 16 companies created while he was vice president. Now the list is 20, and as we continue our investigation, that list is growing.
This is what we know today. Money flowed from the Chinese Communist Party, aligned with individuals into American shell companies, and then that money was wired and transferred to Biden family members. And we saw evidence of intentionally taking steps to hide the sources of money coming directly from China through a series of financial gymnastics.
So, Jeff, there it is. And folks, if you hadn't seen it, that was a pretty good compilation of what the Republicans talked about over the course of that 47-minute press conference. The information that they were taking was that they gleaned from bank records and what they had said, and you kind of heard there that the Biden family had created all these various LLCs, limited liability corporations, that they were talking, the Republicans were talking about more or less that this was a financial shell game in order to hide these payments from foreign entities. So I just wanted to set that up as far as to make clear what was going on here. And what are your thoughts, Jeff? And welcome back.
Well, the gist of this here is President Biden compromised by his receipt of payments, especially from China, but also from the Romanian government, from the Ukrainian government, and this goes back to when he was vice president to the current. Has he and his family received the allegation here, more than $10 million to his son, Hunter, to his brother, Jim, to his daughter-in-law, and to him, who's referred to in numerous emails and documents that the committee has unearthed as the big guy. So what's the share? There's a deal here, purported deal, but there's no business. The business, as you say, of the Biden family is politics. And so if the family's getting $10 million, including Joe Biden, what's it for? And if it's for nothing, does that mean he should be leaning more toward our major enemy at this point, or major competitor, however you want to put it, China? Should he, and is he already compromised, and will he if he's reelected? And this is in addition to all these other issues about his mental competence, his physical not so healthy well-being. And so you got to think of this. The other thing is, folks, this is not normal to have all sorts of banking arrangements with Biden and his family setting up LLCs that seem to be set up mainly to be a place to receive funds from these foreign governments or foreign entities that are our foes. Why are they set up? There's no purported reason other than they're receiving these payments.
As was said in this press conference.
Right.
For the defenders of Biden, said, well, these were just like payments that Hunter Biden had earned, and the question was, if that was the case, why wouldn't the entity that was going to pay Hunter Biden just send Hunter Biden the check? Why did you filter it through all these LLCs? And 9 members of the Biden family were receiving payments, including reportedly $75,000 going to one of the grandchildren. So there's a lot of explaining to do. And I should say, folks, this is an ongoing investigation. If you remember back 50 years ago with Watergate, it didn't happen in one committee hearing. I mean, that was, as we know, Watergate, the investigation went on for over a year after the initial break-in and took up speed. We may have a similar thing. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, 2 things to note here and mentioned in the press conference. One is the bank system sets up, the Federal Reserve that regulates banks has a thing called suspicious transaction activity. And there's certain types of transactions that banks are involved in that are classified as suspicious. There are dozens of these, maybe hundreds of these, involving the Biden family. So numerous of these transactions are per se suspicious. Not my saying that, but the banking system that regulates these banks would label these and has labeled these as suspicious. Doesn't mean that there's something for sure guilty, but it's suspicious enough that it should be investigated by the banking authorities, and in this case, by the Comer Committee, which is the Government Oversight Committee in the House. Why is it happening now, folks? Because for the Republicans gained control of the House just in November of the last election.
In January.
And formally in January.
They came in January.
Formally in January because the election
And we
was
should
in
say
November.
because of if people will remember, the Republicans took 15 votes because of their narrow majority to select a House Speaker. That delayed assigning people to the committees. So the committees were delayed in getting staffed and formulated and who was going to be on the committees. It is coming out now. That's why. Good point.
And also you should know, again, a lot of these activities go back to 2013, 2014, when Biden was vice president in the Obama administration.
Right.
People should know that the Department of Justice has, in part, what's called the deep state. These are federal prosecutors. Many of the federal prosecutors are honest and neutral and so forth, but many are in debt to the Democratic Party. And even when Bill Barr was there as Attorney General under the Trump administration, a lot of these folks were not really under control of the Trump administration are Bill Barr as head of the Department of Justice. They're marching to a different tune.
You and I
They
have said
still
before
are.
how Donald Trump never really gained control of the Department of Justice. It was as if he was still dealing, in many ways, with an Obama Justice Department.
The other thing to keep in mind here, and now the problem is there's always a political element to everything. And we discuss politics and politics as well as public policy. We have a presidential election coming up, which we'll get into, which in a sense has already, the campaign has started. And so you have to say, what are the key topics for that campaign and how does this fit into it? Because, we're mentioned and we'll get into the border crisis, which is a major topic and should be and will be for that campaign. Inflation is a major topic. Corruption is a major topic. Drugs and fentanyl. Now,
the federal budget, the debt ceiling, which is going on
Right.
now. Let's transition here because, folks, we have enough content that we could easily do an hour show or more. So I'm going to push Jeff along. Let's move along to the issue of who's going to be the presidential candidates. And right now, if we were to go with what we know, it is likely to be that it's going to be a repeat of 2020 with Donald Trump facing Joe Biden. Jeff, I have to say, and you look at that, what's scaring a lot in the Democratic Party is they see, as you alluded to earlier in the conversation here, Biden increasingly looking like someone who is suffering from dementia. Now he has as we just talked about, the problem with being tainted as engaging in illegal activities that the House Oversight Committee is bringing up. We have the explosion at the border and illegals coming across and all that's bringing. I kind of question that, in fact, I find it hard to believe that the Democratic Party, which is going to be in Chicago, the convention, I find it hard to believe that they are going to nominate Joe Biden with all these negatives.
Right, and we can already see that he's vulnerable because right now he doesn't really have credible challengers. He has RFK, Robert F. Kennedy's son.
Who
It's hard
last
to
I
imagine
heard is 20%.
Yes, and he himself is 69 years old, not really known for much other than being an environmental lawyer and his anti-vax, not just COVID vax, but anti-vax concern as well. So you might view him usually as at best, fringe candidate. Marianne Williamson, who ran last time, RFK is now 69. That's 69. The son of the more well-known RFK of the 1960s. Marianne Williamson ran before. She's 70. She's not well-known.
She's a marginal. We know she's not going to be the nominee.
She's at 9%.
Let's not spend a lot of time on her.
But I'm pointing. So now the question is, who are the real candidates in waiting if Biden falters, as you point out? J.B. Pritzker, the governor from Illinois. We know him well. Kamala Harris, of course, the vice president. Gavin Newsom, governor from California. Phil Murphy, governor from New Jersey. Governor Whitmer from Michigan. So are any of these people somebody who would instill confidence in the Democratic Party in terms of voters or in the Republican Party? So that's even before. So that's the kind of the scene in the Democratic Party. And when you say it's kind of difficult to believe that they would go ahead, the Democrats, with Biden, well, I've just outlined who some of the alternatives are. Okay, is J.B. Pritzker a much better choice? Is Gavin Newsom, Terry, a much better choice? Is Kamala Harris? We've seen her performance as vice president.
I tell you what.
So, what are the alternatives?
Well, I think the Democratic Party is almost devoid of talent on the bench. And so there's not many people you can realistically look at. You name some that I think cannot be really considered reasonably. I don't think Phil Murray of New Jersey or Whitmer of Michigan. I mean, yeah, their names might be thrown out there, but they're not going to go anywhere in my estimation. I do think that it would come down probably between Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker. J.B. Pritzker, whether you like his policies or not, is good on his feet, good at the podium, both in his ability to speak, which has been a problem both for Kamala Harris, and I don't think even Democrats would dare put her up. Joe Biden can't speak. It's amazing that we have these two people in the White House. Pritzker has appealed to the policies that drive the left in the Democratic Party, so I think he would be able to get the nomination. He obviously has more than enough money, being a multi-billionaire. Gavin Newsom is somebody, to me, I've always looked at as an empty suit, but I think he would be getting support. Certainly runs, obviously, the biggest state, one of the biggest states in the country.
Well, let's give some fairness here to the Republicans. Who are the alternatives? Is it Donald Trump? And if he has problems, who are the alternatives to Donald Trump? Foremost as the alternative would be his primary, his main, sort of a double meaning, his main challenger in the upcoming primaries would be Ron DeSantis. Right now, as you know, Trump is polling in the upper 50s. He moved up in the last few months despite his apparent problems with lawsuits, etc. But he's moved up from the low 50s to the high 50s, and DeSantis has moved down from the high 20s to the lower 20s. In fairness to DeSantis, he's not quite entered the race. He's just come out with his first introductory ad.
Again, we're taping this May 11. We are expecting that DeSantis, now that the Florida legislature has gone out of session, we're expecting that he will announce his candidacy shortly.
But the problem all these folks have, you and I would remember when Barack Obama started running against Hillary Clinton for the 2008 election, he announced, but you and I were there, on February 10, 2007. So almost 2 years before. We're now into May. So DeSantis is a little bit behind the
I would
usual
say,
cycle.
I'm going to disagree with you there. Not really, because he has such name recognition. Here's what I would say. Let's cut to the chase. We don't have to be political and say, well, fair-minded people, we have to bring up all these marginal candidates like Tim Scott. Nikki Haley and Tim Scott are not going to be the Republican nominees. They are, I mean, we can throw their names in there. They're not going to. It's going to be Ron DeSantis or it's going to be Trump. And if you want an outlier, somebody like Josh Hawley. I look at Josh Hawley, though, far more as somebody. I don't think Hawley's going to get in the race. Hawley could be a VP candidate. It's really going to be between DeSantis. It's either DeSantis or Trump. That's really your on the Republican side, realistically speaking.
But Terry, just remember, Donald Trump is 76. He may appear to have more of his faculties about him than Biden, who's only
Jeff,
4 years older.
But seems to have more of their faculties than Joe Biden. And last night, we should say, Donald Trump appeared on CNN. And the Democrats were like, oh, my God. And the Republicans were, look how great he did. A lot of commentators were saying the greatest thing to come out of that appearance by Trump on CNN in terms of favorable to Trump was how alert he was contrasted to Joe Biden.
But the other thing is, Caitlin Collins focused on what I'll call the old issues.
Caitlin, the CNN host.
She's 31 years old. I think she did relatively well compared to other CNN folks. Compared to other CNN folks, she's 31. But what she did do that I think was a mistake, and Trump did not shy away from it. She focused on the old issues. She focused on Trump's claim that the election was stolen, Trump's claim he did nothing wrong on January 6th. She focused a lot on those issues as opposed to what I'll call the real issues that people are concerned about. And Trump let her do it, and he welcomed it, and he doubled down. He said, yes, the elections were still stolen. No, I won't commit to supporting whoever wins in 2024 unless the election, in his view, was held honestly.
I want to move along just a little bit here to emphasize.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look, we're talking about these issues. These issues are not being, that Jeff and I are talking about, we're not talking about them just because of the campaign, but these are the issues that are going to be relevant looking forward. It's not going to be January 6th. It's going to be the things we're mentioning here. It's going to be, is there corruption in the Biden White House? Jeff, in October of this year, it'll be 50 years ago that Spiro Agnew, the vice president of the United States, had to resign the vice presidency because the Justice Department said he took bribes while he was the governor of Maryland. This is exactly what people are accusing now of then Vice President Biden of doing, and they would say even ongoing because of things like Hunter Biden selling paintings for $500,000. You know, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, maybe it's a duck. And this smells and walks and talks like corruption.
Well,
now that's
just remember the hurdle is a lot higher here because one, the bribery with Spiro Agnew was easy to understand, taking an envelope and putting it in his coat pocket that had hard cash. That's number one. The Biden corruption, if it exists, is a much more more sophisticated.
But now now the Oversight Committee has the bank records, and yes, you've got all these LLCs. I would argue, I understand what you're saying, but the fact that you have the 17 LLCs, and as Byron Donald said, it's even more. I think he said 20 now. It's still growing. That makes it even more of an indictment of the Biden family as far as the public opinion, because you're saying, why would you have this? You guys are not running some major enterprise like your Dow Chemical or something. You guys have always just been in the political field. What are you doing with 17 to 20 LLCs?
The other big difference is this Department of Justice under Joe Biden is not going to go after Joe Biden, the president. That DOJ was willing to go after.
Let's bring up one other thing.
That's a big difference.
And you and I and many of our generation will remember it wasn't the Nixon Department of Justice that was going after Nixon. It was a special prosecutor. And many veterans of the Department of Justice being interviewed in the wake of this press conference of yesterday were saying they can't believe that Merrick Garland hasn't appointed a special prosecutor already about this. Look, we also have, as we said today, at midnight, we're going to have Title 42 going away. We already have 5 million. Donald Trump last night said he thinks, but by the end of the year, we're going to have 15 million immigrants coming in. We have members of the Democratic Party in New York, in Michigan. Now that these migrants are coming in to their area, I just heard today that Portland, Maine, 2,000 miles from the border, spent $26 million taking care of illegal immigrants that have come to Portland, Maine, for God's sakes. And aside from the cost that this is hitting everyone, it's also, Jeff, taking people's lives. Let's listen to what the head of the DEA said yesterday to a Senate committee.
Fentanyl is cheap to make, easy to disguise, and deadly to those who take it. Just 2 milligrams, the equivalent of a few grains of salt, can kill a person. It is the leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 18 and 45 today. More than terrorism, more than car accidents, more than cancer, and more than COVID. Nearly 200 Americans each day. The drug cartels responsible for bringing fentanyl into this country are transnational and extremely violent criminal enterprises.
So there you go. I mean, this is, and we've all seen the numbers, Jeff. Over the last 2 years, we've had something like close to 200,000 Americans dead. Almost every day we hear about there's some more stash of fentanyl. And the idea is, as was mentioned by the DEA chief and other parts of her testimony, you know, the Mexican cartels are doing this because they're not looking to kill Americans. That is happening. They're looking to get Americans addicted to fentanyl so that the cartels' revenues continue to grow. This has got to be an issue.
Let's just highlight, as we're taping this, Secretary Mayorkas is giving his spiel, trying to say, yes, we realize this is, he's not saying it, but the implication is the Biden administration now realizes this is more of a problem than they were willing to admit. He was always avoiding the word crisis, just saying it was a challenge. But now he is saying specifically that this administration is going to start focusing on what asylum laws were supposed to focus on, what they haven't been. That is there political persecution that these illegal immigrants are fleeing from? And if there isn't, they're going to be expelled. He says you're going to be surging so many people to process this that it'll go much faster. So within 30 days of a determination that, which is going to have to be a quasi-judicial determination, that there wasn't political persecution of this particular illegal immigrant, that person will be expelled. But the numbers are such, as you pointed out. I think Trump is wrong when he says 15 million, but we could easily be at an annual rate of 3 or 4 million by the end of this year or the end of next year. So we could be easily, we've now had at least 3 million, maybe 4, no, at least 4 million illegal immigrants come into this country. At best, maybe 1 million expelled. That's a net addition of 3 million illegal immigrants in 2 years. In the next 2 years, good chance of 3 million more. That's a problem for all of the cities across the country. It's a problem in Chicago. It's a problem in New York. So this problem, which was a border state problem, has now become a country problem.
It's an
that
issue.
will be a major issue. But let's
Not-
go on. Let's go on.
I agree with you. I don't agree with
Let's go on.
Trump on 15
We only have a few
million,
minutes
but
left.
You're
You
going
can
to
tick off, or I'll tick off the major presidential campaign issues. Corruption, yes. Biden might be certainly a part of that. The border control is going to be huge. Inflation is still huge. It's come down perhaps from 7% a year to 5%. That's a huge problem. The drug insurgents across the country, fentanyl is a part of this border control.
and violence,
huge
crime.
problem.
And
Crime,
we're getting
still a problem.
we're
right?
getting
So all
these
of these,
MS-13 gang members in addition to the homegrown gang members.
that China is still a problem. This country has been focusing on transgender rights in the military instead of military strength. And diversity, inclusion, equity will not be the test of whether the United States has the military strength to deal with China. China is not
As we
focusing
look
on
forward,
trans
we got
rights.
2 minutes here.
Okay, so these are the issues
hang on.
that will be coming up.
Okay. My advice to the Democratic Party is dump Biden, dump Harris. There was a video just came out, including J.B. Pritzker, part of it saying, I'm for Biden-Harris. Big mistake. Democrats, you would be better to get someone else to be your candidate and to quit focusing on the past. You have to deal with the breakdown of what's impacting the American family and American national security. What's your advice,
Right.
Jeff?
There are many people, including in the Democratic
Well,
Party.
let me have you answer. Are you going? What do you think? Should they stay with Biden? And what
No,
do you
they
think?
they should, because even, as you know, the polling now shows that Biden, that before people were saying, well, Biden beat Trump before and he can do it again. Now the polling is showing Trump at 45, Biden 39. But on the other side, the Republican Party, a large number of Republicans, perhaps not the majority in the primary, but a large number are saying Trump might do well in the Republican primary, but he won't be able to win the general election. They're saying, let's go with Ron DeSantis. You get similar policies that the majority of Republicans like, but you don't have the baggage. And if you go with DeSantis against somebody like Pritzker, DeSantis would win. That's the argument. That's the news. Let's see if that happens. Is it DeSantis versus Pritzker? And if so, does DeSantis
Karl
win?
Rove was asked, how does
discussed?
Trump win? And he said, look, we had some very close races. He's got to pick up Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and maybe Wisconsin. Now the voters see the Hunter Biden wasn't a fake. Now the voters see the degree of mental confusion in a Biden. And all of this is going to have an impact. You got 20 seconds. Go, Jeff.
Trump is not your best bet to counteract that. Ron DeSantis is. If Ron DeSantis can't do it, I don't know that Nikki Haley could. I don't know that Mike Pence could.
They're not going to be part of it. Yeah.
So you got to put
Folks,
it on
stay
DeSantis
tuned. Give us your
if
thoughts.
you're
What do you
Republican.
think? And Jeff and I will see you next time.